Did the FX series Feud accurately portray the rivalry between Joan Crawford and Bette Davis? I mean, what did they get wrong?
Am I not every bit her equal? Am I not every bit as interesting as she is?
How creative did these divas get in trying to break the other one's spirit and their body?
Obviously, she cannot be controlled in this environment.
And what do the stars' children have to say about their famous moms?
She said, "Don't speak to my daughters because you would be a terrible influence on them."
We've got shocking new revelations in Hollywood's most notorious catfight. Welcome to Do You Remember? I am Nostalgic Nick. Season 1 of Feud premiered in 2017, starring the incredible Jessica Lange as Joan Crawford.
I hope I've made a new friend.
And the also incredible Susan Sarandon as Bette Davis.
Me too.
I don't think there were two better actresses to play these golden stars. Seriously, could anyone else have done it? Get in the comments and tell us who.
Well, if that's how they see me, they'll never see me again.
Their feud was so notorious, it was impossible to fit everything into 8 TV episodes. And today, one is rarely spoken of without mentioning the other. We'll discuss what was included, what was made up, and what wound up on the cutting room floor. You're not going to want to miss hearing the origin story of these iconic anti-heroes.
That, to me, is what I admire most about her.
But before we dive in, if you enjoy our video, please hit that thumbs up icon. It really helps our channel a ton, and the more likes we get, the more videos we can make for you. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, so I'm not forced to start a brutal, decades-long feud with you. Anywho, we had a ton of fun putting this one together, so hope you enjoy. You didn't eat your din-din. It's hard to imagine anyone else playing Jane and Blanche in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but getting the film greenlit was highly challenging. It was unheard of for two leading ladies to appear in a film together, not to mention they were both considered too long in the tooth for leading roles. Joan Crawford and Bette Davis were two of the most popular starlets of Hollywood's golden age, but the characters they played couldn't have been more different. Crawford typically played beautiful, hard-working young women in rags to riches tales. Highly popular stuff, mostly during the Great Depression. But on the other hand, Bette Davis wasn't afraid to take on the more controversial roles, playing unsympathetic characters. Bette took great pride in her acting chops, and would often tease you or unease you.
How better just to please you.
And please you she did, as Davis won 2 Academy Awards and 10 nominations throughout her film career. Bette Davis was the first person to earn 5 consecutive acting nominations. The rivalry timeline. Joan Crawford and Bette Davis were contract players at different studios for most of their careers, but their paths converged in 1935. That's when Davis fell in love with Franchot Tone, her co-star in Dangerous. The film earned Davis her first Oscar nomination and win, but Tone was in love with Joan, and he was the one thing Bette couldn't have. When the two got married later that year, Bette Davis claimed she was cuckolded. In a 1987 interview, she said, quote, "I have never forgiven her for that, and never will." Joan Crawford left MGM for Warner Brothers in 1943, and tabloid writers prepared for a really big dust-up. But by then, both actresses had each gone through 2 divorces, and their love triangle with Tone seemed to be water under the bridge. Davis even said that basically. She said, "There's room enough on the Warner lot for both of us, goodness knows." After Bette Davis passed on the title role in Mildred Pierce, Joan Crawford was cast and won her first and only Academy Award. That passing might sting a bit more knowing the future. The 1945 Oscar win served the dual purpose of rejuvenating Crawford's struggling career and also getting under Davis's feathers. Bette told one interviewer, "Miss Crawford is a movie star and I am an actress." Well, enter the 1952 Academy Awards. Both were nominees. Crawford earned a nod for the neo-noir thriller Sudden Fear, and Davis nominated for The Star, about an alcoholic movie star attempting to mount a comeback. Hey, isn't that a coincidence?
Come on, Oscar. Let you and me get drunk.
Anywho, screenwriters Catherine Albert and her husband Dale Yunson reportedly based the character of Maggie Elliott on Joan Crawford, whose long friendship with the couple was ending as production began. But none of that really matters, because at the awards that year, the Oscar went to Shirley Booth for her great spin of Lola Delaney in Come Back Little Sheba. Whatever happened to Baby Jane? Crawford and Davis were both in their early 50s in 1962, and neither one could get arrested in Hollywood. Joan Crawford's stock briefly shot up after Mildred Pierce, but she struggled to shake the box office Poison label she earned in the late 30s. Bette Davis had mainly been working in TV, and was also performing in Tennessee Williams' play The Night of the Iguana on Broadway. They both needed a hit, and Crawford attended one of the Broadway performances and then seeked her out afterwards. Joan pitched her the movie backstage. Gossip reporter Hedda Hopper smelled blood and invited the two leading ladies over for dinner and dish. But the conversation was surprisingly cordial. They both said they were excited and trusted that Robert Aldrich would make a wonderful film despite its tight schedule and shoestring budget. Hopper remained unconvinced, but the roles were perfect for the aging starlets. Crawford plays Blanche, the noble, long-suffering martyr, and Davis plays Jane, the sadistic sociopath.
No, it wasn't an accident. I did it.
Bette Davis also famously did her own makeup for this, saying, quote, "What I had in mind, no professional makeup man would have dared to put on me." Then in a twist of irony, Bette also chose her own wig, but it was one that was once worn by Joan Crawford, and she did not know that at the time. And the Oscar goes to... Welp, the critics weren't too kind to Baby Jane, but it was a smash hit at the box office, so who cares? The film recouped its original budget in only 11 days, and eventually grossed $9 million, which, adjusted for inflation, would be equivalent to nearly $90 million today. But when Bette received an Oscar nod and Joan did not, well, yeah, all hell predictably broke loose. Crawford got herself booked to present the Best Director award at the 35th Academy Awards and aggressively lobbied Academy members to vote against Bette. But that's not it. She also contacted the other nominees, Anne Bancroft and Geraldine Page, offering to accept the Oscar on their behalf if they were to win and unable to attend the ceremony. And yeah, the Oscar actually went to Bancroft for her performance in The Miracle Worker. And quick sidebar, I just have to say, that is one of the finest performances I have ever seen. So what did Joan do? Well, she stuck to her word, and boy did Bette Davis turn white as Crawford accepted that trophy. Davis said, quote, "I will never forget the look she gave me. It was triumphant. The look clearly said, 'You didn't win, and I am elated.'"
I was furious because that would have made me the first person with 3.
A new genre. Baby Jane's success created a whole new film genre that became a popular way for aging actresses to give their careers a second act. Hilariously titled hagsploitation films typically featured a formerly glamorous older woman who has become mentally unbalanced, now just terrorizing those around her, and many of those films even had similar sounding names. You know, Whatever Happened to Aunt Alice, What's the Matter with Helen, and Whoever Slew Auntie Roo. Robert Aldrich produced and directed one more film for Warner Brothers and then signed an 8-picture deal with Fox. Well, his first film at Fox would be Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, a thriller about a southern spinster who descends into madness after the arrival of a long-lost relative. Crawford and Davis begrudgingly agreed to work together again. Woof, the feud is over, the wicked witches are dead. Oh wait, never mind, trouble soon started up again, as Joan found out Bette had a more luxurious dressing room. When she complained, Davis replied, "Oh Joan, pull yourself together. This is Baton Rouge, not Beverly Hills." But Crawford also believed Davis was manipulating Robert Aldrich, saying, quote, "She's practically directing the picture for him right in front of me, so God knows what else she's up to behind my back. I might wind up on the cutting room floor." So Joan began missing shoots and claimed she had overtaxed herself due to the film's strenuous schedule. When Aldrich wanted her to be examined by the company's insurance doctor, Joan acted insulted and refused to speak to him directly. "Robert, please tell the doctor I will not see him now." I mean, what else do you expect from the cattiest actress ever? This in turn made the production fall way behind schedule, and the insurance company insisted that Crawford need to be replaced.
I don't care where you go straight to, just so long as you go.
Aldrich spent 4 days persuading Olivia de Havilland to take over the role, and Bette Davis promised to keep the new casting under wraps until Joan Crawford could be officially notified. But there are never any secrets in Tinseltown. You know, maybe it's just an accident. Someone paying off an eavesdropper, basically like TMZ. Oh no, was it the exact opposite? It was Catty Davis immediately leaking the story through her press agent. I mean, wow, burn. Crawford was furious and told The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "Aldrich let me hear it for the first time in a radio release, and frankly, I think it stinks." What did Feud get right and wrong?
So you're just like slack. You're dead weight.
I'll say she is.
Season 1 of Feud was adapted from Sean Considine's 1989 book, Betty and Joan, The Divine Feud. The book was largely sourced from hearsay, rumors, and tabloid articles, and there's no shortage of creative liberties taken throughout the miniseries. Film critic Farron Smith points out that the only sources are people who were there, and those people are Hollywood people. Storytelling is their business. They love a good story, and they don't mind embellishing a little bit. So, when production began, most of the individuals portrayed in Feud were already dead. But no one thought to get Olivia de Havilland's consent.
I have to say, that's when things took such an ugly turn.
The then 100-year-old actress sued FX and producer Ryan Murphy for inaccurately portraying her and using her likeness without permission, but her lawsuit was dismissed. Feud begins during the production of Baby Jane and showcases many famous behind-the-scenes incidents. Davis once accidentally on purpose kicked Crawford in the head and insisted she barely touched her, but Crawford retaliated as they filmed the scene where she had to be dragged around. You see, she knew Davis had back problems and wore a scuba diving belt to make herself way heavier. She also deliberately ruined takes, forcing her chain-smoking co-star to shoot the scene repeatedly. Mamacita was based on a real person named Anne-Marie Brink, who worked for Crawford for nearly 15 years. But it's very unlikely she had a substantial influence on her employer's career decisions. Jack Warner might have been one of the most ruthless studio heads in Hollywood history, but it is also unlikely that he personally planted stories in the tabloids. Now, Bette Davis went to her grave believing she missed out on the Oscar trifecta by very few votes, but it is also unlikely that Hedda Hopper was a co-conspirator in Joan Crawford's mission to sabotage her co-star. They both frequently planted stories with Hopper and Luella Parsons to smear each other, but most of Hopper's writing at the time was very pro-Bette Davis and underplayed the feud. And considering there are over 2,000 Academy members, it's unlikely that Crawford could have influenced enough voters to make a significant difference. What do their children have to say?
No wire hangers ever!
The 1978 tell-all book Mommy Dearest was Christina Crawford's response to a lifetime of abuse, and sales of wire hangers sharply declined after the subsequent film adaptation. Christina Crawford claims her mother only adopted children as a publicity stunt, and both she and her brother Christopher were wholly excluded from the will. But maybe surprisingly, Bette Davis came to her defense, saying, quote, "I was not Miss Crawford's biggest fan, but, wisecracks to the contrary, I did and still do respect her talent. What she did not deserve was that detestable book written by her daughter." Bette also said it would be unimaginable if her own beloved, wonderful daughter were to write a bad book about her. But B.D. Hyman, who played a bit part in Baby Jane, did that very thing in 1985.
You had a good early formative. Well, I mean, I was living with a wacko, neurotic movie star.
My Mother's Keeper characterizes Davis as a selfish, emotionally abusive alcoholic. However, her adopted brother Michael Merrill disagreed so strongly with the book's claims that he disowned her. And let's note that Hyman was also excluded from her mother's will, and was also back in the news in 2017. What for? Well, promoting her ministry after Feud's release. Coincidence? I pray not. Hyman claimed her late mother practiced witchcraft and swore to get even with her for writing the book. Huh, Betty Davis practicing witchcraft, huh? Yeah, I'd believe it.
This is all in my book. Chapter and verse.
You mean all this time we could have been friends? Joan Crawford passed away from a heart attack in 1977, and Betty Davis famously commented,
Don't say anything bad about the dead. Only say good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good.
"That's just diabolically funny, Betty, oof." But despite her frequent criticisms, Betty Davis called Crawford a pro who was always on time and always knew her lines perfectly. She also saw some similarities between herself and her nemesis. Davis told biographer Whitney Stein, "I suppose we have the same drive. She's a survivor, and so am I. And I suppose I do infuriate people the same way she does." Feud showrunner Tim Minear defends the choice to include a dream sequence that ended the series on a more hopeful note. Minear said, quote, "I think it was a poetic way of telling Joan's story, but then giving the audience and us, as part of the audience, the opportunity to see the thing that we wish would have happened. And that's really what that impromptu late night party at Joan's house fantasy scene is about." In 2021, the Library of Congress selected Whatever Happened to Baby Jane for permanent preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry, believing it was culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So, what do you think? Is it just that? Is it significant? Are you on Team Joan or Team Betty? If you saw the really well-made Feud, what did you think about it? And what's another tantalizing Hollywood feud that we should dive into next? So hey, we so appreciate you watching this video. If you're not too busy chain smoking and throwing out all those wire hangers, please get in the comment section below and tell us all your thoughts about Joan, about Betty. After all, we are nothing without you. You can click that thumbs up icon if you enjoyed the video, it really helps. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next deep dive. But most importantly, from all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you so very much for watching.